Hello, all. Josh Pick, Aptus Wealth Management. Today, we are talking cash is not king. We hear this all the time, cash is king. And the concept there is that if we have cash, we have the money afforded to us to take advantage of opportunities. If things get difficult, we have, safety. But here's the reality during inflationary times, and we are undoubtedly in inflationary times that most of us that are watching this probably have never experienced before. Unless you were working back during the late 70s through the 80s, you haven't experienced anything like this. Matter of fact, inflation has done nothing but go down since that time. And for most people who are in their 30s and 40s, you've never experienced inflation above really 3%. It's been less than 3, and many times almost inconsequential, down in the 1.5% range. But now here we are, 2022, and inflation is, at least we could argue, it's 8 to 9% according to what we hear. But if you look at things like at the pump at the grocery store, it's more than that. So having cash, while it prevents you from or saves you from stock market volatility, as we sit here again at the end of September 2022, and the market's down well over 20% year to date. You haven't absorbed those losses, and that's great by having cash. But at the same time, every year you hold in times like these, you're eroding your cash via inflation. So the question that I get all the time is, what the heck do I do if cash isn't king and the stock market sucks? And I still need to hold some cash for safety, liquidity, taking advantage of opportunities, all the things we talked about before. This is not necessarily long-term money. How can I preserve my purchasing power? So I'll give you a couple options. The first one, the pros to it are it's relatively liquid. It's only a 1-year hold. It's backed by the federal government, and it pays a rate that's commensurate with what is declared inflation. And these are called government I bonds. You can go to treasurydirect.gov and purchase an inflation protected I bond. Technically, they last 30 years. The interest rate is reassigned, every year, but currently it's north of 8%. It might even be 9% as we're talking today. And that rate is guaranteed for that period of time. So let's assume, just for easy math, you go in, you get an inflation, an I bond, and you're getting 8% for 12 months. Here's the downside to it. You have to hold it for a year. But if you liquidate it prior to 5 years, they keep 3 months worth of your interest. But let's think about that mathematically. The banks are paying 1, maybe 1.5 if you're lucky. And you can get, remember, 8% less a quarter of the year is 6%. You can get a guaranteed 6% over the next 12 months. I would say that's probably the best guaranteed rate game in town. The downside beyond that, though, is you can only do it with $10,000 a piece per year. So if you're sitting, holding on to $200,000 worth of cash, this really doesn't move the needle much for you. So let's come up with some other opportunities. There's other strategies that, we kind of call them buffered strategies. And what a buffer is it protects you up to a certain percent of the downside of the market. So I'll give you an example. And again, obviously, you'd have to contact our office and we'll give you current rates. But here's a general example. Let's say that you decided that I don't need this money for the next 12 months. I'm going to hold it. Let's consider it something like a CD, a 12-month CD. I'll put my $100,000 in. I know that fixed rates aren't that great, but in 12 months, if the stock market does really well, I'd like to capture some of that, but I'm not so confident that that's going to occur that I'm willing to just kind of go naked into the market and absorb all the losses as well. So I'm going to cap myself by doing this. And if the market goes up, I'm capped at 13%. So market goes up 20%, I only get 13. Market goes up 10%, I get the full 10. I get 100% of whatever the market does, capped at 13. But in exchange for capping your upside, an insurance company will insure you or give you a buffer on the downside. So if the market goes down 20%, they will absorb the first 20 and you would get a 0 for that year. So really, if the market goes down 20, you get a 0. If the market goes up 20, you get a 13. That may be something that comforts you enough to kind of take that cash off the sidelines and take a crack at least trying to keep up with inflation. There is obviously downside below the 20%. So the market, as we sit here, down over 20% already. If the market moving forward goes down another 25%, you would lose 5. But you're certainly kind of narrowing your range of possibilities. And let's think of this pragmatically about maybe it is stock market money and you had intended on putting it in the market, but you're convinced there might be some more fall. You just don't feel warm and fuzzy about diving in yet. Well, no problem. We do this 12 months from now, you were right. Stock market pulls back another 10%. You absorb none of that. You do not have to stay past a year. So you pull the money out and then you go back into the market without a cap, perhaps. So it affords you opportunities and the safety net of knowing that you have a downside risk protection up to a pretty significant level. There are other options that have 100% downside risk protection, but obviously then your potential gain starts being limited, or you lock into a longer period of time. So while you might still be able to get cap rates that are just as high, you might have to tie that money up for 5, 7, 9, 10 years to get that 0% guarantee rather than just the 20% buffer. I think the takeaway for today is while the stock market's a great place to be, and while over the long run, there are going to be very few investments that don't involve leverage, like leveraged real estate or perhaps buying options, et cetera, which obviously anytime you add leverage, you have a level of risk. Shy of those, the stock market is an incredibly difficult place to beat over the long run. But in the short run, you have market volatility, causes heart palpitations, makes you incredibly nervous. Maybe you make terrible decisions and pull out at the wrong time. There are other options that afford you the opportunity to get a very significant rate of return, in many cases, a large percentage of what people on the upside are getting in the stock market, while eliminating a very significant, if not all of the downside risk. Now, in the long run, in another video, we'll talk about the rule of 72 and the difference between earning 8 versus 6. It doesn't sound like a lot as a percentage, but over a long period of time, it's a dramatic difference. So I'm not suggesting that earning 6 is the same as earning 8, but what I am suggesting is that if you can get in a vehicle where it eliminates enough risk for you to stay committed to the course, to the plan, is that worth it, as opposed to making terrible decisions or leaving it in cash and watching your money erode to inflation? My answer would be yes. If you're interested in that, obviously contact our office. We'll walk you through all the details and see if it fits for you and your situation. But know that there are alternatives, and simply leaving your money in cash or selling out of the stock market at the wrong time is not your best option in any way, shape, or form. So stay disciplined, stay the course.